Hi, Naomi. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well. Very happy to see you. You're a really good friend of mine, and I always enjoy chatting with you. But today I want to chat with you in the context of this interview because I want to talk to you about overcoming negative stigma as a female criminal defense lawyer. And you have a very interesting story, Naomi. I know a lot of people know about that, but there may be people who don't know. And I just find like it would be nice to hear about your story, your past before you became a lawyer, how you became a lawyer, and how you were able to deal and face criticism for what you were doing maybe in the past, and how that was perceived, and how things are going now. So we're going to go step by step, and let's just go back to what was Naomi's life, Naomi Sayers' life, before you became a lawyer.
Yeah, so before I became a lawyer, a lot of people are like, why'd you go to law school? And one of the reasons why I went to law school was it was obviously one of the programs I got into. Um, the top program that I wanted to get into actually didn't accept me, which was really funny. It was also at the same school I went to law school, so University of Ottawa. I wanted to study master's in criminology, but I didn't get accepted.
So you became a
Uh,
lawyer.
yeah, so I became a lawyer. Um, and I had been accepted into another master's program, but my mentors at the time were like, you know what, these master's programs will always be here, but an offer to law school will not always be there. And I was like, okay, I'll do that. And I actually wrote my LSAT and applied to the law school. So I filed my application like the date was due, and like at 4 p.m. Um, I feel like it was 4 p.m. because on the day that I filed my application, I emailed my mentors and I say, can you write me a letter of recommendation? I'm going to apply to law school. And they got it done within the deadline. And I was able to submit everything within the deadline. One of the barriers to becoming a lawyer is obviously financial barriers. So a lot of people always ask me, they're like, oh, why'd you only apply to two law schools? I only had enough money on my credit card to afford to apply to two law schools. So even if I wanted to apply to more law schools, I just financially couldn't at that time because the decision was so last minute. It was it wasn't planned, it wasn't, coordinated. Probably if I planned it, I maybe would have put a little bit more money away to apply to more, but it just that wasn't happening. But before that, way before that,
Yeah.
um, I had moved to London, Ontario in the context of sex work. So I moved from Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario to London, Ontario. And I was stripping. And at that time, um, I had met a group of strippers or dancers, um, and they were traveling. They traveled to different clubs. And I was like, wow, I want to be able to do that, because I don't think there's any other way for me to get out of Sault Ste. Marie unless I do it this way. Because um, it just it was flexible. You could go to almost any club except the clubs that where you needed a license. So just for example, in Toronto, strippers need licenses to dance. So in order to get a license, you have to go down to the police station, get a criminal record check. But before that, you also have to have a job offer from the strip club. So you have to be like, I'm working at the strip club. I'm applying. I need my license and you need to pay, and then they need to approve it. Um, so I started to research which clubs had licenses and which didn't. And the club at the top of the list that had no license was in London, and they had sister clubs. And then some of the girls that I was talking to, they also said there's like other clubs that also don't have licenses in or around there. And they're like, so it's pretty easy to get around. So example would be like Windsor, Sarnia, Woodstock. So just like the network of clubs down there. Um, for me, dancing was a way out of Sault Ste. Marie, and I don't think that if I didn't get out of Sault Ste. Marie, I don't think I would be where I am today. Because at that time I was partying a lot because I was a young person, and you know what happens
Yeah. How
sometimes.
old were you at that
Uh,
time?
I was so it was before my 21st birthday.
Okay. Oh, very
I
young.
Yeah, so it was because I remember I went to a Windsor club for my 21st birthday because my intention was to go to Detroit for my 21st
Mhm.
birthday. Um, I just never went to Detroit, but whatever. That's how I connect the
Yeah.
timeline.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and I stayed dancing until I was about 25.
Okay.
Um, and
So
the
it's
reason I
like about 4 years.
no, it was longer than that because I danced before I was 21, so it was
Okay.
about 5, 6 years. And on and off. Like there's sometimes you take breaks just because it's a tiring job. Like, you're
Hmm.
sometimes working 12-hour shifts and you know, if you're also drinking, that can take a toll on your body.
Yeah.
Um,
And you were doing this full time, I suppose?
yeah, and I was also, working other jobs, and then also doing other different types of sex work, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
I left after I actually was stabbed at one of the clubs I was working in, and I just couldn't dance anymore, and I just didn't feel like it was for me. Like,
Safe. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, because there's no health and safety regulations that apply to strip clubs. Uh, I believe there can be, but there's minimal, organizing among the strippers
Yeah.
to do that. There is some organizing. There's some organizing in the States. So stripper unions have been pretty successful, I think, in California and Oregon in terms of setting up unions and labor rights. So like, because a lot of the times the dancers in the clubs, they're classified as independent contractors, but in reality, they're actually employees because their shifts are dictated, how they dress and how they're supposed to look are dictated, when they come in are dictated. And they have to abide by certain rules. So those are all things
Hmm.
that would sort of classify them as an employee. Um, and once you're an employee, that's when the regulations you can sort of get in that way. It's more complex than that, but that's just a
Yeah.
general
Yeah.
understanding.
Mhm.
Yeah, so that's how I got um, to law school. And again, I don't think if without sex work, I don't think I would have never been able to get into law school, just because of the financial barriers. Scholarships are not enough, and being Indigenous growing up on a First Nation, um, w- we're not people who are on First Nations reserve land don't have access to equity the same way that people who live off reserve land do, because our land is not we're not capable of uh, taking out loans against it
Hmm.
at that time. I think there is some programs now to set it up, but that's generally my experience.
All
So,
right. And when you did get into that line of work, was it because you wanted to become a lawyer? Like, did you know that you wanted to get into law at that point, or is this something that you decided to do later on?
no, so I was actually quite young when I started sex work. So I sort of did it backwards. And what I mean by that is most of the time, generally, strippers go from strippers to escorting.
Hmm.
But I went from escorting to stripping to a mix of both. I started escorting probably right after my 18th birthday. And the reason was because I was in a car accident about a few years prior to I was 18, and it really impacted my life. Like I was working two minimum wage jobs in high school, but I was still having the effects of that car accident, which was headaches, migraines,
Hmm.
dizziness, double vision. So like for a whole year that was I couldn't even go to school or do anything. And then the next year, I'm wanting to graduate either very close to the same timeline as my peers or not spending an extra 2 years. So just wanting to spend an extra year. So I did a lot of self-taught courses during that time. And the only job that could replace those two minimum wage jobs was escorting. And that could allow me to also rest and take care of my health. Um, Looking back now, I wish I was smarter about it. But I know what I know, and I'm stronger for it. Did I wish I have a better supports? Yeah, absolutely. Um, but sometimes you're put into situations and you make decisions that what you think are best for yourself.
Do you regret doing that?
No,
No.
no, because
Okay.
it taught me a lot of skills, like to trust my gut, to read situations.
And deal
To,
with people, I guess, right? Like there's a lot of
yes,
dealing with people in these in this context, and
yeah,
difficult sometimes.
yeah, absolutely difficult for sure.
But okay, so now let's get into the very interesting part here is when you're transitioning, you're getting into law school. So was there any pushback? Was there any criticism? Did people take you seriously when you said that you want to go to law school?
So my personal statement was very much, like this is my story, this is who I am, this is the type of work I want to do.
Mhm.
And I'm already doing that type of work because I started to get into sex work advocacy. Because at that time when I was going to law school, so about a year prior, there was the Bedford Constitutional Challenge.
Yeah.
So that was happening, and so that national conversation was happening. And like literally the summer before I went to law school, I had testified at Parliament, I,
Hmm.
opposing the bill that came after Bedford, which re-implemented the provisions.
Yeah.
There was a lot of, you know, um, there was some support, but there was also not support in law school. So I just learned to build, my network of circle of trust, if you will,
Yeah.
allies, and trying to seek out help when and where I could. I spent a lot of time away from law school as much as I could
Hmm.
because it wasn't a good experience for me. So
Okay. Did you, I mean, did people like how was the treatment? Did you feel like people were treating you badly, or like was there this stigma that was associated with your past?
I don't think it was a stigma associated with the past. I think there was more people who were, I felt like I was being taken advantage of because of some of the work I was doing. And it just felt like very savior type mentality. And um, so I had a lot of I'm sure older people who meant well, but were trying to like push, I guess, for lack of a better word, friendships on me. And I get overwhelmed when when I get forced into situations instead of like, um, you know, building up the trust, right? Um, and there are situations where, I was invited to work on projects and it was a lot of microaggressions. So just for example, I had worked on a project with a professor and we were discussing the research that we were working on. And I had shared my viewpoints and the other student who was sitting next to me in the professor's office, she held up her paper and she put it in front of my face. So she was like, and this is what I did. And she was like, this. And I was like, how rude is that?
Mhm.
And the professor did nothing, didn't do anything. And I tried to talk to the professor about it. And I was just like, you know what? I'm done. I'm out of here. So, um, if that's what the type of behavior you want to support, I'm just not going to work with the project with you.
And so was that something that happened often at law school?
Um, Microaggressions, yeah, absolutely. I
Oh,
don't know why.
but what did, so I'm interested here in hearing from you, Naomi. How did you deal with that? Like, what did you do? I know you said that you were trying to spend a lot of time away, but what else were you doing? Because this is sometimes the challenges that lawyer, like in different contexts, but different lawyers and people who want to become lawyers always deal with different situational challenges. How did you deal with that type of aggressive or nasty behavior?
Um, Initially, I was very direct and I was very like, we are not friends. Do not
Yeah.
talk to me. And this is the last of our conversations. And other times I would be like, I'm not going to be reaching out to you anymore. And it was nice hanging out.
Okay.
Um, Now I just don't, just remove myself from the situation because the less energy I have to spend, the better.
Yeah.
And um, I always hear other lawyers talk about, oh, your friendships are made in law school. These are your peers going forward. And I'm like, you know what? That's Do not believe that because those types of narratives can also um, harbor those negative experiences, right? And you don't have to be nice to everybody, but you can respect them and you know just move on. You don't have to be friends with them.
And when these types of incidents were happening to you while you were studying, did they have an impact on your ability to study and to work? Like, was there a time when you felt like you were just so sad, let's say, or really feeling low that you couldn't focus anymore? Was that ever something that you experienced, or it had no impact?
Yeah, it definitely impacted me. So just for
Mhm.
example, I had, also experienced like anti-Indigenous racism from white
Okay.
peers.
So
And it was
how can you elaborate a bit more on that?
Um, so I used to have peers on my Facebook, and oftentimes I share my thoughts on Facebook. And I shared my thoughts one day. I can't even remember what the comment was, but it must have been an Indigenous issue or something. And then one of my white peers, commented about how that was racist and that you know, I should allow for other viewpoints. And I was just like, no, like this is not okay. So I removed her from my Facebook, removed her from the social media, and like we weren't like friends. So I just, this is somebody that I'm not going to invest my time in.
Mhm.
And then, we go to class, and one time after this incident, she sits right next to me and she starts reading my laptop. And she's like, "Oh, you're speaking of this thing," and I'm just like, what what is going on? Like,
Yeah.
like f- I want nothing to do with you. I'm not your friend. And like I'm not saying this to her, like I'm just complete silent because I'm
Yeah.
just like, this is outrageous
Mhm.
that, you know, that you could even think that this behavior is okay. Um, so that's one example. I can't even think of another example that um I guess so after we also had a shooting in Ottawa. A shooter had shot a military person at one of the memorials. I don't know how to say the word Senda Pass. It was up near the hill, and I
Mhm.
live down the hill a little bit. Our school alert system didn't go out, so they didn't send anything until like after, like I want to say a few hours after the shooting had happened, that like to remain in place, don't come to the school, nobody's being let in, nobody's being let out. Like that was so traumatic, and I didn't at that time process it, but I think reflecting back now, like that sort of like just compounded everything that I had experienced all throughout law school. And I remember when I woke up that day, I'm walking to the school and I'm like, where is everybody? Why are the streets empty? And then I go to the Indigenous Services Center and we can't get in. And I was like, this is weird. So I was like, I go walk to the school. The school is empty. Like nobody's walking around. And I was like, what's
Yeah.
happening? Like, and I get into the school and they're like, you're not allowed in. And I was like, oh my God. I was like, what's happening? And then they're like, there's a shooter. And I was like, if I'm not allowed in, how did I get in? Like,
Yeah.
and then the classrooms were all shut and they were like, we're not allowed to let you in. I was like, there's students out here that are not in a classroom. So like we're not being allowed to leave. Like we're being let into the school, not being allowed to leave, but not being allowed into a room, which I get it. Like, you don't know who the shooter is, right?
Mhm.
But I'm not laughing at the situation, but there was like a pile of sandwiches out in the hallway, and we don't know how they got there. But one of the professors from the classrooms came out. They're like, "Oh, I need these for my students," and I was like, "You can take the sandwiches in, but you can't take us in."
Yeah.
And I was like, you know what? I'm out of here. I was like, I'm leaving. They're like, you can't leave. You're like, you could get shot. And I was like, I could get shot in the school, so like it doesn't
Yeah.
matter. Like,
Yeah.
um, so I was like, you know what? I'd rather be out of here than locked in a building and not, I'd rather be going to my house. Um, so like that was, I broke down a lot after that. Probably just walking to school, walking from school. It was really impactful. Like it really impacted me. And, like I'm doing trauma counseling now, working through a lot of things.
Hmm.
And those are one of them,
Yeah.
law school and just law in general. But yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So you've experienced then some um let's say racism
Hmm.
at the university level when you were at law school studying to become a lawyer. But
Hmm.
then you were able, despite that, to become a lawyer, and
Hmm.
you are now a practicing lawyer. And you're really well known in criminal law, and you are very active also on social media. And what I want to ask you, Naomi, is that is this still going on? Are you still facing discrimination or racism? Does anyone comment on your past? Because I know you're open, like the story that you're sharing now, it's not something that you're hiding or that you're ashamed of. But do you still face criticism because of what you did in the past, now that you're a lawyer?
Yeah, absolutely. So, especially back home, there's a lot of people back home who see me as that person who,
Hmm. Like
is,
before you became a lawyer.
yeah,
Okay.
before I became a lawyer. And they keep me there in that little box and they don't see that that I've moved on,
Hmm.
and that I'm helping people now and I'm using that to help people. I see it, again, like in really insidious ways too. Um,
How?
so when I represent some clients sometimes, opposing parties and sometimes decision makers will um, treat or respond to me in a particular manner because of either who I represent or because of the defense I bring into the courtroom. So it's, I'm trying to think of an example here that doesn't um, violate anything.
Yeah.
So I can't think off the top of my head, but if it comes to me, but you know, um, opposing parties, um, not being forthright in affidavits. So um, if I lay a position out saying, somebody didn't do this, this, and this, and this, and they present one half of the picture and you're like, well, if you were actually honest about your situation, about what has happened, you would know that that what you're saying in your affidavit isn't true. um and so a lot of the times my relationships with my clients are impacted not because of anything I've done, but because how the
Other
comment.
people treat you and your
Yeah,
clients see that.
yeah.
Okay. And so have there, like, do other people in the profession make comments about your past?
um
Or maybe not to your face?
I don't think to my face because I
Yeah.
think they know what's going to
Yeah.
happen if they
Yeah.
say it to my face. Um, it's definitely, I've heard comments like, I shouldn't do things on social media, or I shouldn't say this on social media, or, I shouldn't
And do
act like
things,
that.
let's, I mean, just clarify for people who don't follow you. I know you have a very large following on social media. You're very active. It's like maybe the types of photos that you post, let's say, and like the things that you share about what you're doing, and so that kind of thing. So what happens with that? Like what kind of pushback or criticism have you received?
Um, so I take care of my body. I like my body. I'm learning to love my body. And, in a society that tells women we shouldn't love our bodies and we should cover our bodies, I'm saying no, we should do with what we want. And if as long as I'm not hurting anybody, as long as I'm not harming anybody, and as long as I'm not doing anything criminal, then, it's like what do you care? And why are you watching?
And why are you following, right? Like,
Yes.
yeah,
Yes. If you don't like it, don't go to it. End of
yeah.
story. Um, but one of the ways that I see social media is it is engagement, and it does I have received clients that way, and I have received opportunities that way. And I think as lawyers, we have to learn how social media works because it does actually impact our client files, right? So almost every client file I have, if there's like a sexual assault complaint, I say, listen, did anything happen on social media? Did any conversations happen on social media? That's the first question I go to.
Hmm.
And oftentimes they say yes. And I say, okay, let's get a copy of any conversations, comments between, or that may have mentioned, right? And you can actually get a lot of information from social media. So
Yeah.
just on Instagram alone, if you post one picture on Instagram, the back end data of that information, you can actually get the type of device it was posted from, the picture when it was taken, how the picture was taken, how the picture was posted. You can also get like so there's like also like the digital footprint of it.
Yeah.
And there's also like specialists now, so like investigators, um, teams. I know there's some law firms that
Yeah.
like really assess this digital evidence. So, you know, I think it's useful that if you are using these social media platforms, you also get to know how they work and what they do and what they can't do, and sort of where it may be helpful for a defense, or where you have to sort of watch out, or provide legal advice for your client in terms of the social media. So, it is what it is. I use social media and it helps me, and some people don't like it. And I, until, somebody says, I don't know, I don't even know. Like,
But I
I've,
wanted to ask you though, Naomi, like, do you have clients who, so when you get new clients, do they uh already know about like your history, or do you tell them, or do you just don't say anything? And if ever they ask you about that, you just tell like how does that work? Like, is this something that you're
so if you like Google my name, it will come up. And it does come up. And it really doesn't come up from the clients, in a bad way. Um, I will say that there is some sexual harassment from clients that usually happens at the end of the file,
Mhm.
which I don't know why they think it's okay. But that's when, it's like I've done my job. This is over. You can go elsewhere. And here's some resources for you to help yourself. Like,
Okay.
and that's it. I have gotten some Law Society complaints. Um, and one in particular, a Law Society complaint from my social media, but that resulted from a, a post that got taken out of context on the Indian residential schools and um, the unmarked graves at those schools, and then the churches being burnt down. Somehow, there's people were arguing there's a connection between the two. Um, and one of my tweets gotten taken out of context, and Global News had published an article. That article resulted in like a lot of other articles that I consider defamatory, um, because they were taken out of context. Global News had only published the first tweet instead of the list of tweets that were all published at the same time, because I had the thread, and it was when I published it, I said press all. So it wasn't like the first tweet and then a minute later and then 5 minutes later. It was all 12:01 p.m. All 7 tweets were sent at the same
Mm.
time. So it wasn't like they were missing the additional tweets. So that resulted in a Law Society complaint from the Law Society itself. Um, and the Law Society actually cited the Global News article. And so I had to hire lawyers for that. Um, and thankfully, it was closed.
And what about other justice system participants? Do you feel that there is criticism or stigma or negativity from other defense lawyers or judges or crowns?
Yeah, yeah. Definitely other defense lawyers like sometimes don't even like want to talk to me, which is fine. It's okay. You stay over there, I'll stay over here. Crown attorneys, they treat me in a particular way.
How?
Um, so for example, I had to get off the record recently, and the Crown Attorney had decided that it was a good time to introduce the victim impact statement to be filed. And I was like, first of all, you didn't tell me because not only I could have, before I got off the record, got instructions from the client. Um, but I don't think I could have just the way that the timing went. But, he does this in open court and no notice. And I, I was taken aback because I was like, this is really inappropriate. Not only are you doing this on an application to get off the record, which is going to be granted, you're now doing it when my client has nobody there to make arguments why it shouldn't go in.
Mhm.
And this wasn't the first time that this crown has done this. This last minute
So
in
it's not
court.
against that particular client. It's really a kind of a recurrent theme with you.
Yeah. And it's like, you know, not only is it a waste of the court's resources, it's a waste of public funding for criminal defense clients, right? Some of these clients are legal
Yeah.
aid funded. And it's also, just against the rules of professional conduct,
Hmm.
courtesy, integrity, the role of the crown. Um, and it's so much more than that, right? It's like sometimes, you know, um, telling me to read something. And I'm like, I read it, um, but I don't see something that's there. And maybe you can point to me. Or not, you know, um, another example would be um, recommending mental health diversion when the client is already doing so much. Like it would be like a full-time job going to counseling for them. Um, and, inappropriately suggesting that they do the mental health diversion and doing that referral themselves. Like if I didn't think my client was doing enough already, I would have done the referral myself. Um, so just by way of example, like most of my clients are Indigenous and they're vulnerable and young and marginalized in, multiple
Hmm.
ways. So whether it's age, ability, where they're located, their background, their income, their education level, any disabilities that they may have. Um, and, they're now in this system that is telling them everything that they're doing is wrong. And, then they hire me, but
Yeah.
then you have the court and Crown treating me as if I don't know what I'm doing or, um, doing things like as if I'm in the wrong. So not only do my clients lose faith in me
Yeah.
or lose trust in me for nothing that I have done.
And that is an important point here that you're raising. It's also when other professionals in the system treat a lawyer poorly, especially before when their clients are there, really has a very significant impact because the client is watching and observing what's happening to the lawyer, and it can really affect negatively the lawyer-client relationship because the client is also looking at how people perceive their lawyer and how the lawyer is being treated. And so if they see that they're being treated poorly or badly, I mean, sometimes some clients recognize that, like the crown is a little bit crazy or whatever, but sometimes some of them may not like that and just decide that, okay, well, I don't want to continue with this lawyer anymore. So I don't know if like crowns and judges or other colleagues realize that, what you're doing in public and open, especially before a client, a lawyer's client, can have a significant impact on the relationship between that lawyer and that client. So it's really an important point here that you're mentioning, and you're still dealing with that, right? Like this time, I mean, I hope it's not very like it's not predominant, and that not everybody is like that, but there are still people who treat you differently or who treat you this way, probably because of your past, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And just, some of the files that I take on and some of the arguments that I
So
raise.
when you say though some of the files that you take on, what do you mean, Naomi? Like, is it also
Um,
sex workers and or
yeah, and they usually involve a lot of sexual violence.
Mhm.
And a lot of the times, in those files, you have to raise arguments that, um, some of the defenses are that, this is a made up complaint. And sometimes those are legitimate defenses. And, there's um, other defenses like, the way the state conducted its investigation violated the client's charter rights. And you have a duty to raise those arguments,
Yeah.
right? Because if we don't, then down the line, if they decide to appeal, those errors will come out in effective counsel, right? So, there's sometimes, I feel uneasy and anxious raising those arguments, but I have a duty to my client, not um, and if I can't advance, the best defense for him within the rules and within the bounds of the law, then I need to get off the record.
Yeah.
But I've gotten mostly off the record because of how I'm treated in court and how the client views it and the comments from the client and their family after those experiences in court.
And how do you deal with that now as a lawyer? Because you still have these situations sometimes, unfortunately, that still come up. But
Mhm.
for someone who, I mean, I'm sure different people also have different challenges, and maybe someone else also is in a kind of similar situation. But if, for example, someone is listening to this, watching this, and wants to learn, from you, like how you're dealing with the situation. So, what do you do, Naomi? Because I know you mentioned that you do take care of yourself, your body, your well being. So, what do you do when you're facing this type of challenging situation to not let it affect you?
So Anita Zaghetti, she actually has a
Hmm.
really nice blog and resources. I don't know the exact name of the blog, but it's like anti in law, so like AUNT in law.
Hmm.
Um, and she talks about some responses that you can do or interjections that you can do in the middle of a proceeding to just sort of put on the record your concerns that you have the way that the proceeding is unfolding. So,
Yeah.
like, say one party is getting all the time in the world, no interruptions. One example that is listed there on her blog is, just raising that, I acknowledge that you had given my friend a lot of leeway to answer the questions, and his party or witness or client was given a lot of leeway to respond. I would just like to be afforded that same opportunity for my client whose, rights are blah 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 blah. And she goes through a bunch of examples, and a lot of those examples I've actually used in proceedings. So, like, say a judge, or decision maker starts to get annoyed or upset, just responding, be like, I can hear or sense your frustration, Your Honor, but I have a duty here, and this is my duty, and I'm XYZ.
All right. And so this is like advice on how you can deal with these situations in court while you're working. the types of reactions or answers that you can give. But then when you're outside of court, when you go home, because as we know, sometimes what happens in court, like we're human beings, right? Like what happens in court does affect us sometimes, and we are still bothered by it. So when
Mhm.
you go back home after you've had a day where this happened, or maybe Naomi is different, like you just it doesn't like what happens in court stays in court, and then you go home, you're completely disconnected from it. I don't know. Like tell me.
I sometimes, depending on like the severity of it, I'll sometimes order the transcript to review it and I'll order the audio and just for my record keeping. Um, and sometimes I'll journal about it and I'll like debrief with another lawyer or I'll ask them to appear with me at the next
Hmm.
court proceeding to just be like, can you just give me a sense? Like, am I,
Hallucinating?
yeah,
Yeah.
am I
Yeah.
left field here?
Yeah.
And oftentimes it's no, I saw what was wrong and what was happening and you did everything that you could and sometimes that's all you can do. Um, so those are things that I do like outside of court professionally and just personally, like to run, like to go for walks, like to journal. I have a counselor. I'll set up a meeting with my counselor. If I know I have a stressful hearing or stressful day, I'll actually set up a meeting with my counselor shortly after, um, just to like work through like the impacts it had on
Yeah.
me. So, yeah.
And do you feel that as time goes by, like, do you feel like this criticism or these types of challenges, are they like, are you experiencing less of them or more, or is it the same, or is it just your attitude that changes?
I think it's maybe more intensified. Um, and it comes up, like I was saying, in insidious ways,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, um, just for example, like the Crown being like, "Oh, this is a normal thing we do," and it's like, "This is no surprise," and it's like, no, when you're sending me something in the middle of court when I'm talking, that is a surprise. You are doing it without enough time for me to seek instructions, and it's interfering with the client relationship. And if it's happening often and in a particular office of a Crown's office, I don't think it's just me. I think it's, the way I'm being treated.
And Naomi, because I also don't want to take too much of your time, I'm mindful of the time. But if I just want you to just give some final thoughts or advice to people who are watching this, who are going through some challenges in the practice for various reasons. It could be for similar reasons than yours or for other reasons. What advice would you give them and leave them with on how to deal with these challenging situations?
Um, I know counseling is very expensive,
Mhm.
but for Indigenous lawyers, especially if they have status, there is a free counseling available through Indigenous Services Canada. There's also free counseling and free programs through our law society. So I always encourage people to take advantage of those, even though it's like limited at 10. I say, you know what, 10's better than nothing.
Mhm.
And walking can actually do wonders. If you can walk or if you can do something, whatever.
Physical, yeah, like
Yeah.
workouts,
Yeah. Or, whatever within
running.
the bounds, or just
Yeah.
sit outside, or just sit by a window, something, it can actually do a lot. And I've actually come up with a lot of creative ideas with just walking. And that's one of the pieces of advice that I sometimes give to clients is that I say, you know what, you told me a lot of things, and I know that you're probably going to think about it. Go for a walk if you can, or journal.
Yeah.
And you know what, we'll go through anything that you thought of and we'll work through it together. So that's what I actually tell
Yeah.
clients sometimes. So that's my piece of advice. And I've actually another thing that I've started doing is thinking about like 5 things that brought me joy or that I thought were beautiful or made me happy throughout the day, because it can really like flip
Your
my
mindset.
yeah,
Yeah.
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 If I'm
And
stuck.
focus on the positive things that are happening
Yeah.
in that same shitty day, right? Like, like
Yeah.
Yeah.
So those are just like simple things that it sounds silly and it sounds like some people will be like, nah, that's not for me. That's too new age.
Yeah.
But it actually
No, it does. I mean, your perception of things really helps. Like you have to change it. So that's really good advice, I think.
Mhm.
I want to thank you so much, Naomi, for taking the time to chat with me today and and for sharing your story. I'm sure it will help a lot of people who are going through, some challenges and who don't really know how to deal with them. I think you had to face some pretty tough and challenging situations in your life. And when I see you now, like I follow you on social media, and, like I always smile when I see you because it's just so funny sometimes the things that you post. I find, if anything, it just puts me in a good mood because I'm always laughing and smiling when I see your posts.
Thank
So
you.
thank you so much, Naomi. And, I always support you in everything that you do. You're a really good friend, and I can't wait to see you in person sometime
Awesome.
soon.
Yes. Thank you.